You cannot even keep a cactus alive, and you think you can run a business? Those words still echo in my mind sometimes, cutting through the silence of my corner office on the 32nd floor. The same words that once shattered my confidence now fuel the fire that burns behind every decision I make as the CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire I built with these two hands and an unbreakable spirit. My name is Zara Ellington, and 3 years ago, I was just another face in the crowd at Morrison & Associates, drowning in legal briefs and suffocating under the weight of other people's expectations. I wore designer suits that cost more than most people's rent, carried briefcases filled with cases I cared nothing about, and came home every night to an apartment that felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. But in that sterile kitchen, something magical happened every evening. As soon as I tied on my grandmother's flour-dusted apron, the world transformed. The stress melted away like butter in a warm pan. My hands, which spent all day typing soulless documents, suddenly came alive as they kneaded dough and whisked batters into something beautiful, something that could bring joy to others. Baking was not just a hobby for me. It was not some cute little pastime I indulged in to unwind after work. It was the voice of my soul crying out to create something meaningful, something that mattered beyond billable hours and client retainers. Every cake I baked, every cookie I decorated, every loaf of bread that emerged golden and perfect from my oven was a piece of my heart taking tangible form. The man I thought I loved, the man I had shared my bed and my dreams with for 2 years, could not see any of this. Jackson Richardson sat across from my tiny dining table that night, his perfectly pressed shirt unbuttoned just enough to show off the expensive watch his father had bought him. And he laughed at my deepest aspiration like it was the punchline to a cruel joke. "You want to quit your job to make cupcakes?" he had said, nearly choking on the lavender scone I had spent 3 hours perfecting, testing different ratios of flour to butter, until it was absolutely divine. "Maya, darling, this is not realistic. You make 6 figures at the firm. You have a corner office. You have respect. And you want to throw it all away for what? Instagram likes on pictures of frosting?" The way he said it, with that condescending smile that I had once found charming, made my blood run cold. This was the man who was supposed to love me, support me, believe in me when I could not believe in myself. Instead, he was the first person to tell me I would fail before I had even tried. "Passion does not pay rent, Maya," he continued, reaching across the table to pat my hand like I was a child who had just declared she wanted to be a unicorn when she grew up. "You are running from stress. This whole baking thing is just a phase. You will get it out of your system, realize how hard it actually is to run a business, and come crawling back to the firm within 6 months." But here is what Jackson did not understand. What he could never understand because his world was built on safety nets and family connections and trust funds that cushioned every fall. I was not running from anything. I was running toward something. Toward a life where I could wake up excited about the day ahead. Toward work that felt like worship, not warfare. Toward building something beautiful with my own hands instead of tearing apart other people's dreams in courtrooms. That night, after he left my apartment with a patronizing kiss on my forehead, and a promise to talk sense into me the next day, I sat alone in my kitchen surrounded by mixing bowls and measuring cups, and I made a decision that would change everything. I was done living small, done apologizing for dreams that felt too big for other people's comfort zones, done settling for a life that looked successful on paper, but felt empty in my soul. Within a month, I had done the 2 most terrifying and liberating things I had ever done in my life. I walked into my boss's office and submitted my resignation, effective immediately. And I walked into Jackson's penthouse apartment and told him our relationship was over. The look on his face when I handed him back his key was a mixture of shock and barely concealed anger. "You are making a huge mistake, Maya," he said, his voice tight with the kind of controlled fury that comes from not getting your way. "Do not come crying to me when this little fantasy falls apart, and you are broke and desperate." But I was already walking away, my heart pounding with the intoxicating rhythm of freedom. The first few months were brutal in ways I had not anticipated. I took a part-time job as a cashier at Whole Foods, trading my designer wardrobe for a uniform polo shirt and an apron that smelled perpetually of produce. My hands, once soft from expensive moisturizers and weekly manicures, became rough and calloused from constant washing and the repetitive motions of scanning barcodes and counting change. But every spare moment, every ounce of energy I had left, went into my dream. I converted my tiny apartment kitchen into a commercial operation, investing in professional-grade mixers and ovens that took up every inch of counter space. I tested recipes until my neighbors complained about the constant smell of vanilla and cinnamon wafting through the hallways. I photographed every creation with obsessive attention to detail, learning about lighting and angles, and the kind of visual storytelling that makes people stop scrolling and start salivating. I called my business Whisk and Wonder, and I designed a logo that told the story I wanted the world to know. It was a broken eggshell, cracked right down the middle, but instead of being discarded as useless, it was filled with molten gold that seeped through every fracture, making it stronger and more beautiful than it had ever been whole. Just like me. Just like anyone who has ever been told they are not enough, who has ever had their dreams dismissed as foolish fantasies, who has ever had to rebuild themselves from the fragments of other people's expectations. The first order came from my neighbor, Mrs. Chun, who wanted a birthday cake for her grandson. She paid me $40 for a simple chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, and I stared at that crumpled 20 and 2 tens for a full 5 minutes before putting them in an envelope I labeled Whisk and Wonder. First dollar earned. Word spread slowly at first, like honey dripping from a spoon. Mrs. Chun told her book club. The book club told their daughters. Their daughters posted pictures on social media. Each order was a small miracle, a vote of confidence from strangers who believed in my dream, even when the people closest to me had not. I remember the night I got my first big break with crystalline clarity. It was 2 a.m., and I was elbow-deep in fondant, putting the finishing touches on a 3-tier wedding cake shaped like a stack of vintage books, when my phone lit up with notification after notification after notification. A lifestyle influencer named Bliss Morrison had posted a photo of my lavender honey cake with the caption, "When something is this beautiful, you almost do not want to eat it." Almost. She had tagged my tiny Instagram account, and suddenly I had 700 direct messages from people wanting to place orders. 700. I sat on my kitchen floor, still covered in purple icing and edible gold dust, and cried tears of joy and terror in equal measure. This was it. This was the moment when everything changed. But it was also the moment when I realized I was completely unprepared for success on this scale. I maxed out my first credit card buying a second-hand commercial oven from a restaurant that was closing down. The seller, a gruff man named Tony who had owned an Italian place for 30 years, looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern as I counted out $1,500 in cash. "You remind me of my daughter," he said, helping me load the massive oven into my rented truck. "She has that same crazy look in her eyes. That same hunger. Just remember, kid, the harder you work, the luckier you get." I drove that oven home at 15 miles per hour, hazard lights flashing, treating it like the precious cargo it was. It barely fit through my apartment door, and I had to remove the refrigerator to make room for it, but it was mine. My first real piece of professional equipment, bought with money I had earned doing something I loved. The small business loan came next, and it was every bit as difficult as Jackson had predicted it would be. Bank after bank turned me down. "You have no collateral," they said. "No business history. No guarantee that this will work." But I kept applying, kept refining my business plan, kept believing that somewhere out there was a person who would see what I saw when I looked at Whisk and Wonder. That person turned out to be Amanda Rodriguez, a loan officer at a community bank who had started her own business 20 years earlier. She sat across from me in her small office, listening as I pitched my vision with the kind of passion that probably seemed insane to most people. "I can see you have thought about this extensively," she said when I finished my presentation. "But I have to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. What happens when this gets hard? And it will get hard. What happens when you are working 18-hour days and making less money than you did at your corporate job? What happens when people criticize your products or your prices or your dreams? What keeps you going when everything falls apart?" I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Because I would rather fail at something I love than succeed at something I hate. Because every cake I make has a piece of my soul in it, and that is not something you can put a price on. Because I know that if I can make one person's day a little brighter with something I created, Then all the hard work and sleepless nights and financial stress will be worth it. She approved my loan that same day. The pop-up markets were where I really learned what it meant to be an entrepreneur. Every weekend, I would load my car with carefully packaged cakes and cookies and drive to farmers markets and food festivals across the city. I would set up my tiny booth at 5 a.m., arrange my products with the precision of a museum curator, and then spend the next 8 hours on my feet, talking to customers, handling money, and trying to make every interaction memorable. The other vendors became my informal business school. There was Marcus, who sold artisanal jams and taught me about pricing psychology. There was Linda, who made handcrafted soaps and showed me how to create packaging that told a story. There was Derek, who roasted his own coffee beans and became my mentor in understanding profit margins and supply chain logistics. But the most valuable lessons came from the customers themselves. I learned that people do not just buy products, they buy experiences. They buy the story behind the brand. They buy the feeling that comes from supporting someone's dream. They buy the connection they feel to the person who made the thing they are taking home to their families. One morning, a woman approached my booth carrying a small child who could not have been more than 3 years old. The little girl pointed at my rainbow layer cake with eyes wide with wonder, and her mother smiled apologetically. She has been talking about this cake all week, the mother said. We drove an hour to get here because she saw it on your Instagram and would not stop asking about the rainbow cake. I knelt down to the little girl's eye level and asked her what her favorite color was. All of them, she whispered, which made her mother laugh and made my heart swell with the kind of joy that no corporate job had ever given me. I ended up giving them the cake for free, because sometimes the best business decision is the one that makes a child believe in magic. 18 months after I had walked away from everything safe and predictable, I signed the lease on my first brick-and-mortar location. It was a small space in the Arts District, sandwiched between a vintage bookstore and a plant nursery, with big windows that let in gorgeous natural light, and enough room for a dozen small tables where people could sit and enjoy their pastries with hand-poured coffee. The renovation process nearly broke me, both financially and emotionally. Every day brought new problems, new expenses, new regulations I had never heard of. The health department inspection alone required 3 attempts and more paperwork than I had filed in my entire legal career. There were nights when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, calculator in hand, trying to figure out how I was going to make the rent payment, and buy ingredients and pay my one part-time employee all in the same month. But then opening day arrived and everything changed. The line stretched around the block. People I had never met before stood patiently in the morning sun, chatting with neighbors and taking photos of the storefront I had painted sage green with hand-lettered gold signage. The mayor showed up for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, along with reporters from 2 local newspapers and the food blogger who had become my unofficial publicist. When I cut that ribbon, when I heard the applause and saw the genuine excitement on people's faces, I felt like I was floating. This was not just a business opening. This was the physical manifestation of every dream I had ever had, every risk I had ever taken, every moment when I had chosen faith over fear. The first customer was Mrs. Chun, the neighbor who had given me my very first order. She ordered the same chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, and when I handed it to her, she pressed an extra 20 into my palm. For luck, she said, and I had to excuse myself to the back room so no one would see me cry. Within 6 months, we were featured in Tastemaker magazine as one of the top 10 boutique bakeries in the United States. The article included a full-page photo of me in my kitchen, flour in my hair and a genuine smile on my face, with the caption, "From corporate law to layer cakes. How Zara Ellington built a sweet empire on her own terms." I framed that article and hung it in my office, not because I needed the validation, but because I wanted to remember how it felt to see my dreams reflected back to me in print, to know that other people could see what I had seen all along. 2 years in, I opened my second location, then my third. Each expansion was carefully planned and deliberately executed, with the same attention to detail that had made my original shop successful. I hired a team of talented bakers who shared my vision and treated every product like it was going to the most important person in the world, because to someone, it was. The book deal came as a complete surprise. A literary agent reached out after seeing my Instagram account, not because she wanted recipes, but because she wanted the story behind the brand. You have built something remarkable, she said during our first phone conversation. But more than that, you have inspired people to believe that they can build something remarkable too. That is a story worth telling. Whisked away. How I Turned My Broken Heart into a Business Empire hit the New York Times bestseller list within 2 weeks of publication. The book signings drew crowds of aspiring entrepreneurs, mostly women, who wanted to know how I had found the courage to walk away from security and bet everything on a dream. The answer was different every time, because courage is not a one-size-fits-all emotion. For some people, it is a sudden bolt of lightning that illuminates the path forward. For others, it is a quiet whisper that grows louder over time. For me, it was the accumulated weight of small daily choices to believe in myself when no one else would. 3 years and 4 locations later, I was sitting in my corporate office reviewing resumes for a business development position when my assistant, Mira, forwarded me an application that made my blood run cold. Jackson R. Richardson. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading his carefully crafted cover letter that spoke about seeking to return to a values-driven company with strong growth potential and bringing extensive experience in strategic partnerships and client relationship management. The same man who had laughed at my dreams was now asking to be part of them. The same man who had told me I could not keep a cactus alive was now highlighting his proven track record of nurturing business relationships. The same man who had said passion could not pay rent was now expressing his deep admiration for companies that prioritize purpose over profit. I sat back in my leather chair, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, and I felt something I had not experienced in a very long time. Not anger, exactly. Not satisfaction either. Something more complex and nuanced, like the flavor profile of a perfectly balanced cake, where every ingredient serves a purpose. I thought about the woman I had been 3 years ago, desperate for his approval, willing to shrink my dreams down to fit his comfort zone. I thought about all the nights I had second-guessed myself, wondering if he was right, if I was being naive and reckless and stupid. I thought about every person who had ever been told they were not good enough, smart enough, realistic enough to pursue their dreams. Every woman who had ever been patted on the head and told to be practical. Every dreamer who had ever been laughed at by someone who was supposed to love them. And then I opened a new email and began to type. Dear Jackson, thank you for your interest in joining the Whisk and Wonder team. After careful consideration, I regret to inform you that we will not be moving forward with your application. We are currently only hiring individuals who believe in the power of women-led dreams and who understand that passion, when combined with hard work and determination, can indeed pay rent. It can pay for multiple locations, best-selling books, and corner offices with spectacular views. I wish you sweetness ahead as you continue your job search. Best regards, Zara Ellington, founder and CEO Whisk and Wonder. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, and then I sat back and smiled. It was not about revenge. It was about standards. Today, Whisk and Wonder employs 63 people across 5 locations. We have a wholesale division that supplies our products to cafes and restaurants throughout the region. We have an online shipping program that sends our signature treats to customers in all 50 states. We have a scholarship program that provides funding for culinary school students who want to start their own businesses. But the thing I am most proud of is not the financial success or the media attention or even the book deal. It is the wall in our original location where we display letters from customers telling us how our products have been part of their most important moments. Wedding announcements with photos of our cakes as the centerpiece. Thank you notes from parents whose children smiled for the first time in weeks when they saw our rainbow cupcakes. Messages from people who said that walking into our shop made them believe that dreams really do come true. Every cake box we send out includes a small card tucked inside the lid with a quote that has become our unofficial motto. They said I would fall, so I built wings. Because that is what entrepreneurs do. We take the pieces of our broken expectations, and we rebuild them into something stronger, something more beautiful, something that soars higher than anyone thought possible. When people ask me how I did it, how I went from a corporate lawyer to a successful CEO in just 3 years, I always give them the same answer, delivered with the kind of smile that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you are capable of. From scratch, I tell them, just like my recipes, just like my self-worth, just like anyone can, if they are willing to believe in themselves when no one else will. The woman who could not keep a cactus alive now nurtures a business that employs dozens of people and brings joy to thousands of customers every single day. The woman who was told her dreams were too small to matter now runs a company that has been featured in national magazines and generates millions in annual revenue. But most importantly, the woman who was afraid to bet on herself now wakes up every morning excited about the day ahead, surrounded by the sweet smell of vanilla and possibility, building something beautiful with her own two hands and an unbreakable spirit. That is worth more than any corner office at a law firm. That is worth more than any relationship with someone who cannot see your potential. That is worth every risk, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt that you push through to get to the other side. Some people are meant to color inside the lines. Some people find happiness in safety and predictability, and other people's definitions of success. But some of us are meant to create our own masterpieces, to build our own empires, to prove that the only limits that truly matter are the ones we place on ourselves. I am living proof that they were wrong about me. And if you are reading this, wondering if you have what it takes to chase your own impossible dream, let me tell you something with absolute certainty. They are wrong about you too. Now stop asking for permission and start baking your own success story. The only question that matters is this: what are you going to build from scratch? If this story inspired you to chase your own dreams and build something amazing from scratch, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of people who refuse to give up on themselves. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because your next dose of motivation is just one click away. Remember, your dreams are valid, your potential is unlimited, and your success story is waiting to be written. Thank you for being part of our community of dreamers and achievers.